So Tuesday's rolled around again quite quickly, and I wanted to put another tips video together. And today we're going to look at how you can use Lightroom and share your catalog between several computers so that you can have your main editing computer and then still edit on the go or cull on the go. It is a feature that's already built into Lightroom, but lots of people don't know about it. So let's roll the intro and then we'll get going. Okay, so since Adobe launched the two versions of Lightroom that we now have, so Lightroom Classic and Lightroom CC, it has had an inbuilt library that you can upload images to. And you can use that so that you can share your images, rather than your whole catalog. It's easier to share collections and certain albums that you can then edit on the go. There are some caveats with this, so I'm not going to pretend this is the perfect solution for sharing your catalog between several computers. Lightroom CC is obviously not as fully featured as Lightroom Classic, and part of this is going to be using CC to edit on the go or to cull on the go. But it's a pretty simple process. So I'll share screen in a moment and go through all that, but I want to kind of spell out the process first. So you have Lightroom Classic, which you would install on your main editing machine. So that's the fully featured version of Lightroom. That's where your main catalog's going to live. Now I use a single catalog for all of my sessions, and I use collections and smart collections within that. I don't keep all of the images locally though. The catalog file is local on my SSD. My working files that I'm currently editing are on there, and then once I'm finished editing, I move them off to slower drives, and after a year they get removed from my working machine to archives. So I've got backups, but it means that although everything's in one catalog, not all of the images are together and several of the drives are disconnected, and I found that doesn't affect performance whatsoever, and it means all of my images are easily searchable. So that's why I've got everything in a single catalog. Now, if I'm editing on the go, if I've shot a wedding, say, and we're going traveling as a family, then I don't want to come back and have to rush through that wedding. I want to be able to take my time on it. But equally, I don't want to have to be exporting catalogs to hard drives and things like that. So the way I do that is I don't edit my wedding on the go. I will just cull it on the go and rate the images ready to go in the album or whatever. And the way I do that is by using the synced collections feature on Lightroom. So what you can do is you can add, sadly it doesn't work with smart collections, which is what I would typically use to organize a wedding. So what I will do is I will create the smart collection with the filters that I want. So normally I just name it after the couple, I have their wedding date in there so that I can pull that exact wedding into a smart collection. And I have it filtered to only show images that are that have a rating. So when I cull, I go through and I rate the ones I'm going to keep, and I have a really simple rating system. I have a 4-star that it's a keeper and it's going to go in the online gallery, and I use 5-star if it's going to go into the slideshow or into the wedding album, so that I can easily filter those when it comes to putting those together later on in the process. But if I was going to be editing on the go, what I would do is I drag all of those images into a single collection, and I tick the box that says sync with Lightroom. Once that's done, that will upload all of those images to your cloud storage on Lightroom, which comes with every subscription. I only keep the ones in there that I'm currently working on, so that I don't need to upgrade to the 1TB storage or whatever it is. The 100GB I get is more than enough to cull whatever I happen to be working on. So I tick that sync collection, let that all sync. Then you go over to your mobile machine, so your laptop. So I've got mine sitting here with Lightroom CC installed. Now the downside to this is you need to make sure you've got good Wi-Fi. So if you know you're going to be traveling, then I always sync both machines before I go anywhere, so that I know that I've got the images to work on. If it's the worst case scenario, you know, if you plan to do all this culling and all this editing on the go, and you get to where you're going and you don't have fast enough internet, and you haven't synced your laptop, it's going to take hours to do it. And I did make that mistake on one trip, but never again. Now I make sure everything's synced beforehand. So you click sync, let it all upload on Lightroom Classic, open up your Lightroom CC, log into that, and that's going to then download everything from the cloud. Now there are a few caveats in that. If you use custom profiles for your custom camera profiles, so I use the develop profiles for my Sonys. They don't work on Lightroom Classic currently, so it's not gonna be a perfect edit if you are editing. I say that, I've just looked at my machine, and this is the first time I've used this in a while, and it looks like actually the develop profiles do now work. So that is a bonus. So yeah, I've got develop v2 on here now. So right, develop now works. So you don't need to worry about that. If you're going to take images into Photoshop to edit, I would wait and do that on your main machine. If you right click your image on your main machine, do edit in Photoshop, and it adds it back into your Lightroom, that's not going to work the same way in Lightroom Classic. It doesn't have the same functionality, so leave your big edits till you get home. Now, what I tend to do rather than edit on the go is just cull on the go, because Lightroom CC is a cut down version of Lightroom Classic. But you can go through, you can 5-star images, you can mark images as rejected, and that's all going to sync with your computer at home. So if you've got, for example, 2 people working on things, it might be that you share your editing, it might be that you outsource your culling. If it's someone if it's like a family member that's doing your culling, or a business partner, then you can obviously, if you're sharing a login anyway, then they're going to be able to access all these images and go through and do your culling, and that's just going to instantly be reflected on your Lightroom Classic on your desktop, so that you can then only go through and edit the ones that you want to. So let's jump over to a screen share, and I'm just going to walk through the process right through from sharing the collection on Lightroom Classic to how you would get that into Lightroom CC and back again. So let's jump over the computer. Okay, so if you want to edit images on your laptop while you're on the move, and you want it to sync with your Lightroom Classic, the easiest way to do that is to use Adobe's sync feature, which is if you've got an active Adobe subscription. So easy, what you need to do is, I've got a random collection of images here. I'm going to create a collection. So I'll come down to my collections. I'm going to create a new collection. Let's just call it example, and there's a button here which is sync with Lightroom. I'm going to make sure that that's ticked. I've got these images selected, and I'm going to create that. So now I have this collection here with 9 images in it, and you can see there's a little simple symbol here that tells me that that's syncing with Lightroom, and you can toggle that on and off. So the idea is, once I've synced this, they'll then appear on Lightroom on my laptop. I can then do any culling or any editing on there. Obviously Lightroom CC isn't quite as fully featured as Lightroom Classic, so I tend to just use it for culling. So once this is all synced, you set this up, make sure that that option is turned on, and then we can jump over to the laptop and I'll show you how it all works there. Okay, so you can see the 9 images that I've synced here. You can see it's synced the collections. I've just got this example library. This is on my Lightroom CC. You can see the sync process up here. It'll say whether it's synced and backed up. You can also, this obviously works with syncing it with Lightroom on Android and iOS as well. So this will sync all between those. I'm on my Surface Book at the moment, so I'm on the proper laptop. Now, one of the reasons I don't finish my edits on here isn't just because Lightroom CC isn't as fully featured as Lightroom Classic, but it's also because this screen is really glossy. It's a really nice quality screen, but it is very glossy, and glossy finishes add contrast and saturation, whereas my main editing screen is a fully calibrated matte display, so the colors are way more accurate on my main machine, which is why I tend to not use this for full edits. Sometimes I'll drop my presets on and decide whether I'm going to use my color preset or my black and white preset just as a base, so I will do that level, but I'm not going to finalize the edit until I've got it on my main machine. But you can see as you go through these, this is all synced nicely. You've got you can rate it at the bottom, and if I go through and rate these, that would then be reflected straight back on the desktop, and you can flag them as picked or not picked at the same time. So set these ones to picked. And then when we jump back over to Classic, you'll see that that's been reflected. Now, obviously, you can make edits here. So if I do something really obvious, like pull this exposure right down, then when we jump back to the PC, you'll see that reflected there. But the difference is, I mean, so this doesn't have all of the options. So things like you see, it doesn't have things like dehaze and things like that, which I do use a lot to add a little bit of contrast back to the images. So there's a few things that you're not going to have there as options as you're going through. This is why I tend to finish my edit on the main machine, and because if I'm going to clone anything out, I do that in Photoshop. So I would right click and do edit in Photoshop. You can export from here. You can edit in Photoshop, but it doesn't always sync nicely back. So I tend to not worry about that. I just do, as I say, the basic edits in this. Now the good thing is they keep adding more and more functionality back into CC. So the difference between the two is getting less and less, which is a good thing to see. But I just find this is a really efficient way of culling on the go and picking images that are going to go into into albums and things on the go. And then once I've done these, if we now jump back over to the main machine, so now you can see I've jumped back onto Adobe Classic back on my desktop, and you can see the ones that I've starred, I've already got the stars. You can see that there's the pick flag set on these ones, the photo is showing up as the photo is flagged. And if I go to this one, you can see that the edit has pulled through the reduction in exposure that I put through, so it all syncs quite nicely. Once I've changed this, because it's in a sync collection, that's going to sync back. And I am aware now that I've putting the video together that the drop down menu didn't load on the drop down menu didn't record or when I was using Lightroom CC, but it's pretty self-explanatory. There's just a pause and a pause and restart sync button at the bottom of the drop down when you click on the little cloud logo on the top right. But there you go. Hopefully that was helpful. It saves me an awful lot of time when I'm editing, when I'm on the go. So I can cull images and then come back and just crack through on the editing when I get back, or if I want to batch apply presets before I finish the edit on the main machine. Any questions at all, or any thoughts on what we've covered, drop them in the comments below and hit the subscribe to get notified of the next one.